The blackness outside the viewing port was absolute, broken only by the faint, unchanging pinpricks of stars that had looked the same for 1,000 years. Inside Persephone Station, the air was a constant, recycled hum of machinery and quiet routine. The station was a small, lonely finger of humanity poked into the silent dark. Its purpose to listen, to observe, and mostly to confirm the emptiness. Yuna was calibrating a spectral analyzer when her brother's voice, usually so calm, cut through the hum from the Khun's alcove. "Yuna, you need to see this." There was a tightness in Jiho's tone that made her put her tools down at once. She floated over, her dark hair drifting in the low gravity. His face was lit by the soft blue glow of his console, his eyebrows drawn together. "I was filtering the background static from the Tycho anomaly," he said, his fingers not touching the controls, as if the data were dangerous. "Standard sweep." Then this came through. He played the audio. At first, it was just noise, a chaotic, rushing hiss of cosmic interference. Then, buried deep, a pattern emerged. It wasn't a language. It was lower, older, a rhythmic, pulsing thrum that seemed to bypass the ears and vibrate directly in the chest. It felt like sorrow. It's repeating every 47 seconds. It's not on any known frequency. It's like it's bleeding through from somewhere else, Jiho murmured. "Run a full decryption suite." "All layers," Yuna said, her scientist's mind pushing past the unease. "Visual, if there's any embedded data." The station's old but powerful computers whirred. Minutes ticked by. The main screen flickered, and a jumble of images resolved. Sharp and terrifying dot, it was a view of a world. A beautiful world. Skies of soft violet, forests of towering, glowing plants that pulsed with gentle inner light. And there were beings. They were tall, slender, their skin shimmering with soft bioluminescent patterns that flowed like water. The images were not filmed. They were felt, as if memories had been ripped out and cast into the void. The feeling was one of profound peace, of deep connection. Then the sky darkened. Sleek, obsidian ships, shaped like cruel arrowheads, descended without sound. They moved with a horrible, predatory grace. Beams of cold green light lanced down, not to destroy, but to capture. The glowing beings scattered, their patterns flashing with panic. A silent scream that the audio stream translated into a wave of psychic static, so sharp it made Yuna flinch. The next images were fragmented, horrific. The insides of a ship. The gentle beings were held in glowing fields, their light dimming. Other smaller creatures with too many jointed limbs and carapace-like armor moved among them, using sharp tools. It was not warfare. It was harvest. A systematic, emotionless taking apart. The data stream carried the raw sensory feedback, the searing pain, the crushing despair, the final, fading flicker of a beautiful consciousness being snuffed out. Yuna found she couldn't breathe. Jiho had turned pale, his hand over his mouth. This was not a broadcast. There was no plea for help, no declaration, no identification of the hunters. This was a death cry, a species' final moment, their collective terror and agony somehow amplified by a freak stellar event and vomited out into the cosmos. "It's a telepathic signature," Yuna whispered, her voice raw. "A communal line. They didn't send this. They screamed it when they died. The Tycho anomaly must have focused it, like a lens." "Who are the others?" Jiho asked, pointing at the obsidian ships. "Does it matter?" Yuna's eyes were fixed on the screen, on a single shimmering figure whose light was slowly going out. "They're killing them. All of them. And we are the only ones who heard it." A new, sharper alarm blared through the station. The external sensors. Jiho slapped a control, bringing up the rear-facing camera feed. Against the starfield, a shape blotted out the light. It was sleek, obsidian, an arrowhead. One of the hunter's ships, that it had no running lights, no identification beacon. It simply existed in the void, a slice of pure darkness. It had followed the echo of the cry to its source. To them, they know we heard it, Jiho said, his voice terrifyingly calm. There was no hailing frequency, no demand for surrender. A port on the alien ship irised open. A pinpoint of green light glowed within. The core. Get to the emergency pod. Yuna yelled, shoving him. They were already moving, hands flying over consoles. Yuna initiated a total data dump, every gigabyte of the horrific signal, onto the station's main broadcast buffer. Jiho was priming the small, heavily shielded escape pod nestled in the station's spine. The alien ship fired. The beam was silent. A section of Persephone Station's main communications array simply vaporized in a flash of molten metal and frozen gas. The station shuddered, lights flickering. Air screamed out into the vacuum through the new wound. Yuna stumbled, her helmet not yet sealed. She pulled herself along a railing toward the pod hatch, where Jiho was waiting, his eyes wide. The station's central computer voice, always so placid, announced, main power failing. Broadcast systems compromised. They tumbled into the cramped pod, sealing the hatch just as another green beam sliced past the viewport, carving a glowing trench in the station's hull. Through the pod's small window, Yuna could see the dying station, and beyond it, the silent hunter. The signal, she gasped. We can't let it die with us. Jiho, strapped into the pilot's couch, was rerouting power. The station's main transmitter is gone, but the emergency beacon has a small burst-capable antenna. If I override all safeties and dump the core's remaining energy into it. Do it, Yuna said, strapping in. Send it all. On every human frequency. Broad spectrum. Make sure someone else hears it. Jiho's fingers danced. On his screen, a progress bar filled. He was tying the station's last breath of power, its life support, its engines, its heat into a single powerful shout into the dark. The hunter ship, seeing the energy spike, turned its nose toward them. The green port began to glow again. Now, Jiho. He slammed his fist down on a large, red button labeled emergency broadcast. Pod eject. Two things happened at once. Outside, the crippled Persephone station flared like a tiny star for 1 second. From its broken spine, a torrent of raw data, the fear, the pain, the glowing forests, the obsidian ships, the harvest exploded outward in a sphere of energy and information. It raced for Earth, for Mars, for every listening post and ship in human space. And from the base of the station, the escape pod blasted away on a plume of emergency thrusters. A tiny seed hurled into the deep. The hunter's green beam lanced out, but it was a fraction of a second late. It sheared off a piece of the station that was already dead, missing the pod by meters. Tumbling in the sudden silent freefall, Yuna and Jiho watched through the viewport. The obsidian ship for a moment seemed to pause. It did not pursue them. To something that advanced, a single escape pod was irrelevant. It had silenced the broadcaster. Its mission, it likely assumed, was complete. It turned and vanished into the dark, leaving behind only the expanding shell of a dying station's last broadcast and a single, fragile pod drifting into the endless night with two survivors who carried a horror in their minds. The cry had been sent. The question now, hanging in the vacuum between the stars, was whether anyone would be listening. The signal from the void did not arrive like a normal transmission. It did not queue up in secure military buffers or appear as a flagged packet on scientific servers. It was a raw, unfiltered blast. Riding the emergency frequency override that Persephone Station had used in its final moment. It bloomed into human space like a silent scream in a quiet room on the mining colony of RE7, buried deep in the red dust of Mars. A veteran miner named Jun was halfway through repairing a faulty drill head in his cramped workshop. His old wall-mounted monitor, usually tuned to a news feed, flickered and went solid gray. Then the sound began. It was a low, throbbing hum that made the tools on his bench rattle. The gray screen exploded into a chaos of light and shadow-glowing forests, creatures of light running, and the dark, sleek shapes descending. Jun felt a pressure in his chest, a sudden, sharp memory of losing his partner in a tunnel collapse 10 years prior, a feeling of helpless, choking despair. He dropped his wrench, his hands shaking. In a small apartment in Seoul, a young girl named Hana was playing a video game, controlling a spaceship on the screen. Her tablet beside her fizzed with static, and the same images ghosted across its surface. She didn't see the details of the harvest, but she felt a profound, overwhelming fear. She began to cry, not understanding why, calling for her mother. At Luna Command, the nerve center of human space defense, the reaction was different, but just as visceral. Admiral Taeyan was in a strategy meeting about supply lines when every screen in the war room turned to the same chaotic stream. Alarms sounded as the station's cyber defense systems tried and failed to isolate the data burst, to categorize it as an attack. "Shut it down." Someone yelled. "Silence," Taeyan ordered, his voice like stone. He stood, his eyes locked on the main display. He watched the beautiful, glowing world. He saw the obsidian ships. His tactical mind, trained over 30 years, didn't see horror at first. He saw patterns, ship deployment vectors, energy weapon signatures, target prioritization. It was a masterclass in ruthless, efficient military action. Then the stream showed the inside of the harvester ship, the clinical, systematic dissection, the extinguishing of light, the raw psychic data, translated into a subaudible wail by the speakers, filled the quiet room. A young lieutenant turned away and was sick in a corner bin. Taeyan did not move. He saw the strategy now for what it truly was. It wasn't war. It was pest control. It was factory farming on a cosmic scale. "Source," he said, his voice still calm. "Persephone Station, sir. Edge of the Tycho sector." The signal used their emergency beacon as a carrier wave. It's everything. Their full sensor logs, plus this embedded data stream. Status of Persephone? Beacon went dead mid-broadcast, Admiral. No follow-up comes. Life signs. Negative. The room was cold. The images kept playing on a loop, mandated by the station's final programming. Taeyan finally looked away from the screen, meeting the eyes of the officers around the table. He saw fear. He saw revulsion. And he saw, in some, a flicker of the same cold anger that was solidifying in his own gut. The signal could not be contained. It leaked. News agencies, with nothing but the terrifying raw footage and no context, played it. Social networks exploded. The governments of Earth and the colonies scrambled. Emergency sessions were called. The debates were fierce and global. In the unified Earth Council chamber, voices clashed like weapons. "This is a tragedy, but it is not our fight." One ambassador argued, his face projected on a large screen from a distant colony. "This Colix force is technologically superior. Engaging them is suicide. We must seal our borders, go dark, and hope they pass us by." Another face, older and lined with worry, countered. "They already attacked Persephone. They silenced a human outpost. They know we are here. Hiding will not work." A third voice, shrill with fear, added, "And what would we do? Send our fleets on a rescue mission? For aliens we don't know? It's sentimental madness." The argument raged for hours. Reports came in of public unrest, of mass gatherings in cities where people stood in silent vigil, sharing the unspoken horror the signal had planted in them all. It was more than pity. It was a shared wound. Admiral Taeyeon waited. He had been given the floor as a military advisor. When he finally rose, the chamber quieted, not out of respect, but out of exhaustion. He did not use a single hologram or tactical display. He walked to the center of the chamber, a datapad in his hand. With a tap, he isolated a single image from the stream and projected it. Life-sized, behind him, it was one of the luminous beings. Its form was graceful, its light soft and gentle. It was looking up, its featureless face somehow conveying a bottomless sadness. And wrapped around it, holding it rigid, was a cruel, mechanical harness of dark metal, with needles and probes poised to inject and cut. For 2 days, we have discussed strategy, politics, and survival, Taeyeon began, his voice low but carrying to every corner. We have talked about this as a problem. It is not a problem. It is a person. He pointed at the image. We did not receive a declaration of war. We did not receive a request for aid. We eavesdropped on a murder. We heard the final cry of a stranger in the dark. The question before us is not one of tactical feasibility. He paused, letting his gaze sweep the room. The only question is this: are we the kind of people who, upon hearing that cry, turn up the volume on our music to drown it out? Or are we the kind who get up to see if we can help? He switched off the image. The room was utterly silent. They will come for us, he said simply. Not because we are a threat, but because we are noisy, and because to them, we will look just like that. He gestured to where the glowing being had been. Another source of something they want. Another light to snuff out. We can wait for them to do it here, in our homes. Or we can choose the ground on which we say no more. He sat down. The vote was called. It was not unanimous. But when the results flashed on the screen, the margin was decisive. The Response Act was passed. Across the solar system, a switch was flipped. A dormant, divided humanity began to mobilize. Shipyards around Jupiter, which built freighters, started retooling. Asteroid mining corporations offered their massive bulk haulers. Military fleets from Earth, Mars, and the Jovian colonies began consolidating. Not under a single national flag, but under a new, simple emblem, a stylized sound wave rising like a shield, protecting a small point of light. They were not ready. Their ships were slower, their weapons weaker. But as Taeyeon looked over the first readiness reports, he saw something new. The fear was still there, but it had been joined by a fierce, stubborn determination. They had all seen the same thing. They had all felt the same ache. For the first time in history, humanity was not fighting for land or resources or ideology. They were fighting because it was the right thing to do. Deep in the silent dark, far from the sudden frenzy of human space, the Kellic scout ship completed its report. The noisy little station was destroyed. The signal had been terminated. The anomaly was logged. The data was processed by a mind that understood only efficiency and resource acquisition. In the vast, cold database of the Kellic's hierarchy, a new entry was automatically generated. Asterisk, asterisk, species designation, 887 asterisk, 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 origin, Sol system asterisk, 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 technology, tier, 4, pre-FTL cohesion, primitive kinetics, asterisk, 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 threat assessment, negligible, asterisk, 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 observed behavior, emotional, erratic broadcast patterns, asterisk, 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 status, scheduled for post-harvest pacification, Following primary harvesting cycle of species 886 Lumine, ***, the note was filed, and the galaxy, as far as the Kellics were concerned, remained in its proper silent order. The council chamber on Ethelgard was a monument to calm, ancient power. The air itself seemed thick with time, smelling of polished stone and slow-grown wood. Holographic representations of ambassadors from a dozen star-faring species flickered around a vast, circular table or sat in quiet physical dignity. Mina, the human envoy, felt terribly small and very new. Her simple gray suit was stark against the vibrant silks and gleaming scales of the others. She had just finished her plea. She had shown them the condensed data from the cry. She had outlined the Human Response Act. She had spoken of the Kellics, of Persephone Station, of the moral imperative. The silence that followed was worse than any argument. The reptilian ambassador from the Silix Commonwealth was the first to speak, his tongue flicking out to taste the air. A tragic tale, Envoy Mina. Truly, the loss of a persapient bioluminescent species is always an aesthetic blow to the galaxy. Mina blinked. Persapient? They had art, communal thought, a complex language of light, instinctual bioluminescence and herd behavior, interrupted a being that looked like a collection of shimmering crystals, its voice a soft chime. The Kellics are efficient. They have their place in the ecological balance. To interfere is to risk disruption on a galactic scale. We have arrangements. Arrangements? Mina's voice tightened. The Kellics harvest only from designated systems, the Silix ambassador said, as if explaining to a child. They do not encroach on established territories. Your species, in its admirable passion, is seeing morality where there is only biology. The strong harvest. The weak are harvested. This is the oldest law. Mina felt a cold anger rising. So we do nothing? The crystal being chimed softly. You are new to the chorus of the galaxy. Your voice is loud, but it lacks harmony. Learn our ways. In a few centuries, you will understand the wisdom of non-interference. Mina left the chamber, her shoulders straight, but her heart a stone in her chest. The message was clear. Humanity was alone. Not just alone, but seen as a naive, foolish child shouting in a library of elders, got back in the Sol system. The news of the galactic dismissal was met not with despair, but with a grim, collective shrug. Admiral Tayan, reviewing the fleet preparations in the orbital docks over Mars, simply nodded when he heard. Did we expect anything else? He said to his aide, They have lived a long time by looking away. We have just learned to see. It changes everything. Humanity's strength, it turned out, was not in its unity of technology, but in its unity of chaos. They had no single grand fleet design. Instead, they had 1,000 different ideas, all thrown into the forge of desperation. A corporate engineer from a mining guild looked at the Kellics, harvesters, and didn't see a weapon. He saw a material processing rig. His team took the heavy magnetic plates from asteroid processors and retrofitted them onto old freighter hulls. They weren't shields to block weapons. They were push fields designed to shove and disrupt the trajectories of the smaller Kellics drones. A video game programmer, conscripted for her skills in swarm algorithms, designed the control systems for the Ruckus drones. They were cheap, fast, and fragile, built from cum satellite parts and maneuver thrusters. Their purpose was not to kill, but to confuse to swarm sensors, to mimic larger signatures, to be an unbearable, buzzing cloud in the enemy's face. Jun, the miner from Mars, volunteered the moment the call went out. They needed pilots who could handle bulky, unwieldy craft in tight, dangerous spaces. He found himself in the cockpit of a converted ore hauler, its cargo hold stripped and lined with emergency gel pods and insulated blankets. His ship was not part of the fighting fleet. It was labeled a lifter. Its job was simple: go in when the fighting was hottest, grab who you could, and run. The core of the human plan was not a battle. It was a salvage operation, a rescue. The first human fleet to leave Sol was a bizarre patchwork. Sleek, old military cruisers flew alongside bloated freighters, bristling with makeshift armor. Clouds of tiny, ruckus drones buzzed around them like gnats. At its heart was Admiral Tayan's flagship and a small cluster of ungainly lifters. Chun's among them. They called the operation Cradle's Reach. The journey through the newly plotted warp lane was tense and quiet. There was no bravado. Every person on every ship had seen the cry. They knew what they were going to see when they dropped out of warp at the edge of the cradle system. The silence was shattered. The beautiful violet world was scarred. Patches of the glowing forests were now blackened ruins. In the high orbit, the obsidian calyx harvesters hung like vultures. Smaller tendril ships flitted between them and the surface, carrying their living cargo. It was the signal, made real. The psychic weight of the place, even filtered through ship hulls, was a physical blow. All ships execute Plan Bastion. Tayan's voice was calm, the fleet-wide channel. Ruckus swarms engage. Push ships forward screen. Lifters, wait for my mark. The calyx reacted not with alarm, but with annoyance. Their sensors showed a ragged influx of primitive, erratic signatures. They adjusted their formation slightly, diverting a handful of tendril ships to intercept what they assumed was a curious, suicidal pest dot. Then the ruckus drones hit. They didn't fire a single shot. They streamed into the calyx formation, flooding targeting sensors with garbage data, bouncing harmless laser pings off hulls, clustering around viewports. To the precise, logical calyx, it was like suddenly being attacked by a frenzied, screaming dust storm. The larger human push ships lumbered forward. As calyx drones darted in to eliminate them, the miners-turned pilots activated their magnetic fields. The effect wasn't destructive. It was like hitting a high-speed object with a giant, soft pillow. Drones were knocked spinning off course, their elegant trajectories thrown into chaotic tumbles in the confusion. A narrow, chaotic path opened toward the planet's lower atmosphere, right toward a major harvester ship connected to the surface by a glowing beam of energy. Lifter group, go. Go now, Tayan ordered. Chun clenched his teeth and shoved his throttle forward. His ship, never meant for speed or grace, shuddered as it plunged into the atmosphere, heat shields screaming. Around him, the other lifters did the same, a group of falling stones. Anti-air energy bolts from the harvester lanced up at them. One lifter took a direct hit and vanished in a fireball. Chun weaved, his hands slick with sweat, using skills learned dodging rockfalls in Martian tunnels. They broke through the cloud cover into a hellscape. Below was a vast, open pit, lit by the sickly green light of the harvester beam. In the pit, thousands of the luminous beings, the Lumin, huddled together, their light dim and fearful. Calyx ground units moved among them, herding groups toward the beam. Chun didn't think. He slammed his ship down in a clearing at the pit's edge, the landing struts groaning in protest. The rear ramp dropped. His crew, armed not with guns, but with fast-acting sedative sprayers and cutting tools, rushed out. The Lumin flinched back from the humans, their light pulsing with terror. Chun stood at the base of the ramp, holding out his empty hands. He thought of the cry, of the shared feeling of loss. He simply looked at the nearest Lumin, a tall being with soft, blue swirling patterns, and tried to project one clear feeling. Friend. The Lumin hesitated. Then its light shifted to a tentative, pale yellow. It took a step forward, then another. It moved past Jun and up the ramp into the ship. Others followed, a quiet, flowing stream of light. They loaded until the gel pods were full, until the corridors were lined with softly glowing beings. "That's it. We're at capacity," his loadmaster yelled. Jun gave the order. The ramp closed. As his ship lifted off, he saw other lifters doing the same, pulling away from the nightmare pit, some of them trailing smoke, all of them carrying their precious, living cargo back toward the stars dot above. The Calyx command ship, finally recognizing the tactic, disengaged from the annoying drones and turned its main weapons toward the fleeing, bulky lifters. But Taeyan was ready. His flagship and two others fired not missiles, but massive, weighted tethers mining anchors. They slammed into the flanks of the Calyx ship, not to damage it, but to lock on. Then the human ships fired all their engines at full reverse, pulling the larger, surprised Calyx vessel sideways, using its own bulk as a shield to block the fire aimed at Jun and the other lifters. On Ethelgerd, and on 100 watching posts across the galaxy, the silent elders observed. They saw the primitive, chaotic human tactics. They saw the clumsy ships. They saw the blatant, illogical theft of the harvest dot, and for the first time in millennia, the cold, quiet galaxy felt a tremor of something entirely forgotten. Shock. The humans had not fought a battle. They had thrown a rock through the window of the slaughterhouse and run off with the livestock. And for a moment, as the ragged human fleet vanished into warp, dragging their anchored prize with them, the ancient, pragmatic galaxy held its breath. The place they called Bastion was not a planet or a station. It was a nest, hidden deep within a turbulent, mineral-rich asteroid belt in a nameless star system. It was a collection of hollowed-out rocks, salvaged ship hulls, and hastily assembled habitats, all linked by a web of cables and temporary walkways. Light and heat were precious. The air smelled of recycled oxygen, cold metal, and the strange, sweet scent of the lumin. The thousands rescued from cradle were fragile, shell-shocked ghosts. They gathered in the largest cavern, a silent, shimmering pool of soft light. Their patterns, once vibrant, were muted and slow. Yuna, who had been brought to Bastion after her rescue, spent every waking moment with them. She had no telepathy, but she had a scientist's patience and a deep, quiet empathy. She would sit with them, showing them simple things on a datapad, a star, a leaf, a human face. In return, they would sometimes project a gentle pulse of warmth or a confusing, sad fragment of memory, a glowing tree, now ash dot one day, as she showed an image of the Tycho anomaly, the stellar phenomenon that had focused their cry, the lumin. Beside her, the one with the soft blue swirls, whom Jun had first approached, reacted strongly. Its light flared. It touched the screen, and a complex, three-dimensional pattern of intersecting lines and energy nodes flowed from its touch onto the pad. It was not a picture. It was a schematic. A map of subspace geometry. Yuna called for Geo. Together, they worked for days. The Lumin, who they learned called themselves the Elo, were not telepaths in the way humans imagined. They were quantum resonant. Their very biology was tuned to the underlying fabric of space-time. The Calyx didn't harvest them for food or slaves. They harvested them as a power source, a living battery to fuel their most advanced technology, including their flawless, silent warp drives. "The anomaly," Yuna whispered, her eyes wide with realization. It wasn't an accident their cry reached us. Their distress resonated through the fabric the Calyx used to travel. They're not just showing us their pain. They're showing us the Calyx's road. Meanwhile, Admiral Taeyoon faced a colder equation. The stunted cradle had worked, but it was a one-time trick. The Calyx would not be confused twice. Long-range scouts reported a massive Calyx punitive fleet mobilizing. Its trajectory was clear. Sol. They were coming to erase the noisy, irritating pests. In the war room, a cramped, armored capsule in. The heart of Bastion Taeon laid it out for his commanders. We cannot stop them in a straight fight. Our combined fleets are a fraction of their size and power. If we meet them head-on, we lose. Earth falls. A grim silence followed. Then Jun, now a captain of the lifter corps, spoke up from the back. So we don't meet them. We don't fight them where they're strong. We fight them where they travel. All eyes turned to him. He shifted, uncomfortable with the attention. It's like a mine collapse. You don't fight the rockfall. You shore up the tunnel ahead of it. You change the shape of the battlefield. Taeyeon stared at him, then slowly looked at Yuna's report on his screen. The ELO schematic of subspace geometry. The Kelix Road. An idea, terrible and brilliant, took shape. It was not a weapon. It was a trap. They called it the Bastion Doctrine. Using the ELO understanding of resonance, human engineers designed massive, crude devices, resonance generators. They were ugly things, built from stripped-down warp cores, focusing arrays, and enough power cells to light a city. They weren't ships. They were mines to be placed not in physical space, but in the layers of subspace the Kelix used. Their purpose was not to destroy, but to fracture, to turn a smooth highway into a jagged, unpredictable scree field, to create zones where warp travel became impossible, where physics itself seemed to stutter. The Kelix fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system with the quiet confidence of a natural disaster. Their formation was perfect, a wall of obsidian. They expected to see the human fleet arrayed in a pathetic, brave last stand. They saw nothing. Then space itself began to warp. Not the clean fold of their drives, but a sickening visual shimmer, like heat haze on a desert. The lead Kelix. Ships, traveling at speeds that defied logic, hit the first resonance field. The effect was instant and violent. There was no explosion. Instead, space around the ships seemed to crackle and fold in wrong directions. Ships were wrenched out of formation, not by impact, but by the very road beneath them, turning to quicksand. Their elegant trajectories became chaotic tumbles. Alarms, silent to human ears, would have blared across their networks. From behind asteroids and the dark side of moons, the human fleet emerged. But they did not charge. They harried. Small, agile squadrons, led by pilots who had trained on the ruckus tactics, darted into the fractured zones. They fired not at the hulls of the disoriented Kelix capital ships, but at their sensor arrays, their weapon emplacements. They were like piranhas, taking tiny, irritating bites. Taeyeon's flagship, the Guangzhou, moved to the center of the chaotic field. On its bridge, Taeyeon watched the main Kelix command vessel, a monstrous leviathan struggling to stabilize itself in the roiling subspace storm, open a channel. All frequencies. Translation protocols active, the channel hissed. Mina, now on the bridge as a diplomatic advisor, nodded. They are receiving. Taeyeon did not smile. He spoke clearly. His words meant as much for his own crew and the watching galaxy as for the Kelix. Kelix hierarchy. You are not hunters here. You are not harvesters. You are lost in a forest you cannot understand. The ground you walk on is ours. The darkness you hide in, we have lit. You will withdraw from Sol. You will cease all harvesting of the ELO, or you will be trapped here, in this broken place, until your power fades and your ships become tombs. There was no verbal reply. The Kelix command vessel responded by powering up its primary weapon, a spinal-mounted cannon that could crack a planet's crust. It began to turn, agonizingly slow in the fractured space, aiming for the Guangzhou. Execute anchorfall, Taeyeon said calmly. From the shadows of a nearby gas giant's ring, 3 modified human freighters, sacrificed for this moment, shot forward. They were packed not with cargo, but with magnetic plasma and the last of the Bastion resonance generators. They flew not as ships, but as bullets. One was vaporized mid-flight. The second was sheared in half. The third, trailing fire, slammed directly into the flank of the Calyx command ship. There was no thermonuclear blast. Instead, a pulse of distorted energy erupted from the point of impact. The resonance generator activated at point-blank range. A localized bubble of fractured, impossible space engulfed the Calyx Leviathan's entire forward section. The great ship didn't blow up. It simply stopped. Its lights flickered and died. It hung in the void, trapped in a knot of its own unraveled physics, completely immobilized. The effect on the rest of the Calyx fleet was immediate. Their flawless coordination broke. Without the command ship's direction and faced with a battlefield that actively fought against them, their advance stalled. They became a confused swarm, some trying to push forward through the chaos, others attempting to retreat, colliding with the distorted zones. On the bridge of the Guangzhou, Mina watched the silent, struggling fleet. Her personal comm unit chimed. It was a secure, priority channel from outside the system. The identifier code was Silix. She opened it. The face of the reptilian ambassador from Ethelgerd appeared. Its earlier condescension was gone, replaced by a sharp, calculating focus. It did not speak of morality or aesthetics. "Envoy Mina," it hissed, its tongue flicking. "Your Bastion tactic. Is it scalable? Can it be deployed at the Keller Nexus?" Mina understood at once. The Nexus was a key strategic crossroads for Calyx harvest fleets. The Silix were not moved by pity. They were moved by opportunity. Humanity had just demonstrated a viable weapon against a common nuisance. She met the ambassador's gaze. "The technology," she said carefully, "can be shared with the right partners. Partners who recognize the sovereignty of all sentient life." There was a long pause. The ambassador gave a slow, deliberate blink. The Galactic Concord would be interested in partnership talks. Your admiral's message was received. The forest has indeed changed. The channel closed. Mina looked at Taeyun. The battle wasn't over, but the war had just changed. They were no longer a lone, screaming child in the dark. They had become the builders of the thicket. And the galaxy, ever pragmatic, had decided it was time to pick up some sticks of its own. The galaxy did not shudder from a single massive explosion. It shuddered from a change in the weather. The news of the immobilized Calyx command ship at Seoul and the subsequent Bastion treaties between humanity and the Silix Concord rippled through the stellar community like a chill wind. Ancient species, who had viewed the Calyx as an unpleasant but immutable force of nature, began to recalculate. Humanity had not won a war. They had introduced a new rule to the game that the negotiations did not take place on Ethelgerd or Earth. They were held in the cold, neutral void near the Keller Nexus, at a station hastily built by joint human and Silix engineers. Mina sat across from the lead Calyx interlocutor, a being whose carapace was etched with intricate patterns denoting rank and age. It did not have a face, just a smooth, dark plate, but its posture radiated cold, furious confusion. It was not used to being spoken to from a position of weakness. "You have disrupted designated harvesting cycles," the interlocutor stated, its voice a synthesized buzz. "You have stolen property. You have employed forbidden spatial manipulations. You will cease. You will return the Lumin biomass. You will dismantle your resonance generators. Then, your species may be considered for a probationary non-harvest status." Mina did not blink. On a screen behind her, she split the view. One side showed the live feed from the Sol system, where the trapped Calyx Leviathan still hung, dark and silent, in its bubble of fractured space. The other showed the blue-green world now being terraformed for the ELO, streams of light moving peacefully through new forests. "You misunderstand," Mina said, her voice quiet but clear. "We are not here to negotiate our survival. We are here to dictate the terms of yours." The interlocutor was silent. Such a statement was illogical. It made no sense. Mina continued. "The Bastion resonance frequency is now in the hands of the Silix Concord, the Grellian Compact, and 3 other sovereign powers. By the end of this cycle, it will be a standard defensive technology. Your primary advantage, your mobility, is now a vulnerability. Your harvesting routes are now canyons where we can drop walls." She leaned forward slightly. "Here are the terms. First, an immediate and permanent cessation of all harvesting of sentient, quantum-resonant life forms, classified henceforth as ELO-type species. Second, the release of all ELO captives currently in your holdings, their locations to be provided to a joint oversight committee. Third, your fleet's withdrawal to the pre-harvest boundaries defined in the galactic logs. Violation of any term will result in the permanent isolation of your core systems behind a bastion field. You will be left to contemplate the silence you so enjoy." The Kelix interlocutor processed this. It was not a negotiation. It was a surrender document. But the alternative was strategic oblivion. The galaxy, smelling blood in the water after millennia of fear, would turn on them completely. The interlocutor gave a single, sharp nod. The agreement was sealed not with a handshake, but with a pulse of encrypted data. The galaxy's shudder was not one of fear, but of recalibration. Humanity was not the strongest, nor the wisest, nor the oldest. They were the catalyst. The stubborn, empathetic, infuriatingly ingenious catalyst dot on the new world. Named Sanctuary, Yuna walked with the blue-swirled Elo, who had chosen the name Aelin. The air was warm, smelling of alien blossoms and damp soil. A stream of glowing fish, native to this world, darted in a creek. Human children, born on Bastion or brought from Sol, played a running game with young Elo, their laughter mixing with soft, chiming pulses of light. The Elo were healing. Their light grew stronger, their patterns more complex and joyful. John visited often. He no longer piloted a lifter, but helped coordinate the logistics of Sanctuary. He stood with Yuna, watching the children. Aelin drifted over and extended a slender, glowing limb. Without words, a wash of feeling flowed into Chun's mind, not a memory, but a gift. The feeling of sunlight on leaves. The taste of clean water. The simple, profound joy of being safe. Chun, a man of few words, felt his throat tighten. He simply nodded. On Luna, Admiral Teon reviewed a different site. In a stable orbit around Mars, the first joint venture shipyard was operational. The frames taking shape were neither purely human nor Silix in design. They were something new, something built with Bastion technology, integrated from the keel up. They were not warships, exactly. They were guardians. The first of the Bastion peacekeeping force. His old aide handed him a datapad. The first mixed crew assignments, Admiral. Humans, Silix, and a few Grellian observers. They're calling the lead ship the Persephone. Teon allowed himself a small, tired smile. The name was fitting. From death, a new beginning. In her office on Luna, Mina finally had a moment of quiet. The flood of diplomatic data had slowed to a stream. On her desk, a simple, non-holographic photo showed her family on Earth. She looked at it, then out the viewport at the bright, beautiful curve of the blue planet below. It was safe. For now, and for the foreseeable future, it was safe. A priority alert chimed, but it was not a crisis tone. It was a unique frequency, one designated for Sanctuary. She opened the channel. There was no text, no verbal message. A data packet arrived containing a single, complex pattern of light. It was beautiful, a swirling, evolving dance of gold and silver and deep, peaceful blue. She didn't need a translation metrics. She had spent enough time with the reports, with Yuna's notes. She understood. It was not a cry of desperation. It was not even the word gratitude, though that was part of it. It was a concept, a feeling, a statement of belonging. It meant, asterisk, you are our strange, wonderful siblings. You are the unexpected song in the quiet dark. You are family. Asterisk. Mina sat back in her chair, the soft light of the message playing across her face. She thought of the icy silence of Persephone Station, the deafening horror of the cry, the frantic, chaotic hope of Bastion, the stubborn, terrifying defiance it sold. The galaxy had shuddered at humanity's furious, unified shout. But it was in the quiet that followed, a quiet no longer silent, but filled with the hum of construction, the laughter of children from two worlds, and the gentle, resilient light of a people finally safe, that something new and fragile and profoundly strong was being built. Not an empire, not a hegemony, a family. And for the first time since hearing that desperate cry in the dark, the future did not feel like a battlefield, but like a dawn.